Corporate needs you to find the differences between this picture and this picture. They're the same picture.
Back in November of 2024, Tencent announced this brand new game called Light of Motiram, though the word new is relative, as at a glance you would assume that it's a game that we've already played. So this right here is a concept art for the title, and as you can see, it bears a rather striking resemblance to another franchise, Horizon. I mean, just the design language of the aesthetics, it's clearly, for lack of better words, directly lifted from Horizon, and so the game has caused quite a bit of discussion. Now, the game itself is described as an open-world survival crafting game, and looking at the gameplay, it is more of like Monster Hunter meets Horizon meets Ark meets Palworld is the best way I could describe the gameplay. The gameplay certainly isn't exactly like Horizon, but the aesthetics, the design language, the art direction of Light of Motiram is really close to what Horizon kind of executed and what they kind of established. The striking resemblance that it bears to Horizon raised quite a few eyebrows in conversations about this on the internet, with people, for example, right here calling this game Horizon Zero Originality and Horizon Forbidden Creativity, because just about everyone could see the parallel between this and what it was essentially copying. Now, people wondered if Sony was going to do something about this, and for a time, it seemed like they were just willing to let this go, but that all changed on July 28th, 2025, when news outlet Reuters reported that Sony is suing Tencent for allegedly ripping off the Horizon video game. So it reads right here, Sony has sued Tencent for copyright and trademark infringement in California federal court, accusing the Chinese tech conglomerate of ripping off its popular Horizon series of adventure video games. Sony said in a lawsuit filed on Friday that Tencent's upcoming Light of Motiram is a slavish clone of its games that copies several distinctive Horizon elements and threatens to confuse players. Because again, when you look at Light of Motiram at a glance, it just looks enough like Horizon, where people who are not super in the know when it comes to like gaming news or super in tune with gaming news may confuse it as a Horizon game potentially. And so that's where Sony is saying a line has been crossed. Now, what's especially damning is that there was apparently once upon a time discussions about a potential collaboration between Sony and Tencent for a new Horizon game. It reads right here, Sony said in its complaint that it declined an offer from Tencent to collaborate on a new Horizon game last year. Tencent later announced Light of Motiram, which Sony said features identical gameplay, story themes, and artistic elements to Horizon, as well as many other similarities. So the narrative that generates is that when Sony refused to partner with Tencent on a new Horizon game, Tencent basically said, fine, we'll just make legally distinct Horizon. This almost feels like Tencent going, oh, you won't partner with us on a Horizon game? Fine, we'll make our own Horizon game, and we'll essentially copy a lot of visual elements from your franchise. Now, one area where I think Sony's lawsuit is reaching is quote-unquote identical gameplay, because the gameplay of Light of Motiram, while there might be elements that look similar to Horizon's, ultimately, A, doesn't actually play identically to Horizon. You can tell that just from a gameplay perspective, they are rather different games. And B, even if they had similar gameplay, it doesn't matter, because when it comes to gameplay, that's one area where games take inspiration from each other constantly. There's a general consensus that gameplay should not be something that should be trademarkable. Like, one company can't have a trademark on the first-person shooter genre and make it so other companies can't make first-person shooters. And even within the genre first-person shooters, there are plenty of gameplay mechanics that have like evolved over the years that other companies took inspiration from. When it comes to third-person action-adventure games like Horizon, that's also a game that from a gameplay perspective takes inspiration from a bunch of other third-person action games that came before it. So unless they like directly ripped the code from Horizon directly and then use that to build their gameplay, in the hypothetical scenario of their gameplay being very similar to Horizon, I don't feel like that'd be grounds for a lawsuit. But we're not even at that point, because the gameplay of Light of Motiram does look different and distinct enough from the Horizon games. Now, on the other hand, the way Light of Motiram's visuals, art direction, overall presentation looks so similar and bears such a strong resemblance to Horizon, that's an area where Sony might have some legal grounds. It's that thing of like copying somebody else's homework and changing it a bit it still constitutes as plagiarism. Is Light of Motaram's designs one-to-one exactly identically the same as Horizon? No, but are they similar enough that you could confuse one for the other? I mean, potentially and arguably, yes. And if that's an argument that can be made, and if that's something that the courts agree with, then there is potential copyright infringement here. And understand that it's not just the concept art of Light of Motaram that is so similar to Horizon. It's also, creature designs, aspects of its in-game visuals. Here are some comparison screenshots between Horizon and Light of Motaram, and at a glance, you'd be hard-pressed to be able to distinguish which is which. They both kind of look like they're part of the same game when you put them side by side. You can see right here all of these different comparisons where, yeah, the similarities are incredibly striking. But from a gameplay perspective, you look at it and you can see right here that it is very much a survival game akin to Ark and Power World, where you build your own base of operations and the like, and then you can go out and hunt mechanical monsters that, again, visually bear a very strong resemblance to the designs you'd find in Horizon. But the core gameplay is different enough, I think, that the gameplay argument is not something they can make. Also because I don't think gameplay should be trademarkable, especially something as broad as like some of the combat elements and gameplay mechanics that Horizon utilizes. So many other games utilize that as well, that to make that grounds for a lawsuit is, I think, dangerous territory. But aesthetically, it could be argued that there's just a blatant ripoff going on here. And it's not even just the visuals, it's also the audio and the music and the presentation of the marketing. So for example, right here we have the official reveal trailer for Light of Motaram. But if I told you this was like a Horizon spinoff or a new Horizon entry, you might believe me. Look, listen to this and look at the visuals here.
I call you forth, the fourth breath I grant you, to live in this world which spirals against time.
Yeah, it's rather blatant. And that's where the copyright lawsuit might have some grounds, because if you create work that bears enough resemblance to something that already exists, you can tell that it's like an intentional copying it with just some slight changes to make it legally distinct, but isn't really all that distinct, then you kind of do open yourself to the possibility that the judges who look at this case may argue with those who are accusing you of ripping them off. And then the general gaming community sentiment is that the ripoff here is apparent, that on some level, Sony is justified in pursuing this legally against Tencent. So right here, for example, Genki said, Sony is suing Tencent for allegedly ripping off the Horizon video games. And scrolling down, you have a comment that's one of the top comments, putting in quotes, allegedly, because for them, it is so blatant and it looks so clear how much they copied from Horizon. Now, there are folks who are arguing things like how FromSoft, for example, allows folks to make Souls-likes that bear a strong resemblance from a gameplay perspective, and FromSoft not kind of pursuing legal action against those who essentially take the FromSoft formula and make their own game from it. But I think the difference with those other Souls-likes is that they do look distinct from FromSoft's own titles. Sure, they copy the gameplay, and again, the gameplay is the aspect that shouldn't be allowed to be trademarked. That's the aspect where inspiration should be allowed, but the specific visual language, aesthetics, art direction, and art design, when that's copied, that's where confusion can happen for the general masses. But the thing is, if you look at a Souls-like Lies of P, that's a game that you can say has a very unique identity visually, aesthetically, so on and so forth. The FromSoft Souls-like formula is definitely there, but that's gameplay, aesthetically, and just the general direction and art and its identity. You can see that it's unique. It doesn't feel like just, somebody ripped off one of the FromSoft games. You cannot confuse Lies of P with Elden Ring. You cannot confuse Lies of P with Dark Souls, so on and so forth. And you can say the same about many Souls-likes that gameplay-wise took great inspiration from FromSoft games, but still managed to make it distinct enough and have its own identity. Whereas Light of Motaram, you could argue, the gameplay is actually very divergent from Horizon, but the way it looks and the identity that it has, it feels like it directly takes from, copies from, and, some say rips off directly from Horizon. So it seems as though in this particular case, a lot of folks generally do seem to be rooting for Sony. Though, of course, at the end of the day, the courts will decide. And ultimately, this is one big mega corporation battling another big mega corporation. I don't have any particular stake in it. Neither do the customers. But also, there's the element of not trying to normalize taking somebody else's work or drawing from it so heavily that you essentially are trying to take advantage of the fame of what is something very aesthetically recognizable. If you're profiting off of making your game look similar to somebody else's work and visual design language, so on and so forth, then there can be an argument to be made there that that is not particularly ethical, especially if it happens on an indie level where a big company were to copy a smaller company. So in general, it's not a good idea to normalize ripping off other people's work, but I'll be curious to see just how ardently Sony pursues this and what the final results will end up being. It feels like to me that Sony, just from a copyright standpoint, might have some legs, but from the trademark standpoint, that's where gameplay mechanics and, gameplay inventions come in. That's where I don't think they have any grounds to walk on. For now, all we can do is wait and see what happens. In the meantime, though, let me know in the comments below what your thoughts and opinions are on this legal situation where Sony is suing Tencent. Do you think Sony is justified based on what you've seen of Light of Motiram? Do you think there is a ripping off situation here that justifies Sony's lawsuit? Or do you believe that Light of Motiram is still ultimately distinct enough that you don't think Sony's lawsuit is justified? Where do you side in this situation? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and to be further updated on all things gaming news, reviews, and discussions, stay tuned right here on Young Yeah. I'll see you guys next time. Young out.